G'day guys, and welcome to another 6th Law 3D tutorial. Today we're going to be working on the simplest, easiest to use depth of field there is, and it's going to look completely professional. What we're going to do now is we're going to open up any scene you have in Blender, so you can use a default scene even. And what I've done is I've just made a very simple setup that is comprised of 4 UV spheres in a plane, and the UV spheres are separated at different distances from each other. Alright, so when we use depth of field, there is an object that is the center point or the focus point of our scene. Now that object, we have to tell the camera what that object is so it knows where to create the depth of field behind. So what we're going to do is we're going to select whatever object we want to be the focal point of our scene. So for me it's the orange UV sphere in front of my camera. I'm going to scroll down on our panel on the right to item, and we're going to change the name of this object to something that I'll remember. So we're going to DOF will be the name, depth of field, and then we're going to zoom out a little bit in it while still in our camera mode, or you can do it just in the normal viewport. We're going to right click and select our camera. We're going to go into the camera settings over here on the right, and we're going to tell the camera what object we want to be the depth of field. So we'll click on that there, put in DOF, there it is there, and click on it. Rightio, now Blender knows, the Blender camera knows what object is depth of field. We're also going to enable and display limits. Now this means, so if we press 1 to go into our viewport and we zoom around, it'll tell us what object, or that crosshair sorry, will tell us where the depth of field starts. So that's where it'll start, and then after that it'll begin to get blurred. Rightio, now what we're going to do is we're going to press Control left arrow on our keyboard, which will bring up the node editing. Now this is going to be very simple, don't worry, it won't be any freaky node editing going on here, it'll be very simple, clean cut, and you'll be able to remember it. Now we want to make sure down here out of these three we select the very right one, compositing nodes. We're going to click on use nodes and click on backdrop so we can see a backdrop. Now first what I want you to do is to press F12 and render out your scene. Wait for that to render. And then once it's finished, press escape. Now we can see over here in our render layers and composite, we actually have the image that we're using. Now if we click on render layers and go output viewer, now to open up that menu was just Shift A, so click on render layers, Shift A, output viewer. Now this will allow us to view our render layer. Rightio, now what we're going to do is we're going to say to Blender, look, I've specified what object I want to be the depth of field, now I want to specify how much blur I want. So what we're going to do is we're going to click out into space, we're going to press Shift A, filter, and we're going to add defocus. Now we want the image attached to the image part, so the yellow, click and drag down to the yellow, and then we want the Z, click and drag on that down to the Z. It's as simple as that. Now we're going to connect this yellow dot here on the right over to our viewer so we can view everything that we're doing. Now you'll notice that it's very noisy. What we want to do is disable preview and enable use Z buffer. Once that's finished, the value that will create the amount of blur in our scene is the f-stop value, and the lower you go the more blur there is far away from your object. So say if I go to a value say like 3.9 and then click on my viewer, we can see exactly what we've got there. We've got the blur out in the background and the focal point here being very sharp. Now we can change that value just by clicking and dragging it up. And you'll notice that the objects are now becoming clearer because our value is becoming larger, and to make it more blurry the value becomes lower. Now you guys can play around with this, enjoy it. Very easy, simple to use thing, and it makes your renders look closer to the professional, realistic 3D you're going for. Hope you've enjoyed the tutorial, guys, and get out there and do some blendering.